Hey everyone, Dalton here. Welcome back to another rapid game playthrough. We're going to go ahead and try to see if we can get a good game here. Starting off with a rating of about 1791. Let's see if we can get a good opponent, get a good game going. Okay, looks like we have a game here against Scorpy 007. I'm going to start off with d4 in this game, kind of switch the openings up a little bit. Most of the games we played so far, I've been focusing on knight f3 on the first move, but we'll go with d4 on this one. Okay, so knight to f6. Let's go ahead and play. I'll go for c4 here. Just kind of play a normal type of d4 opening. Black's playing e5, which is the Budapest Gambit. I'm going to go ahead and take the pawn. There are ways to avoid the gambit if you don't want to take it, but taking the pawn is kind of the most challenging idea for the most part. So black goes knight e4. The idea behind knight e4 is to throw in some ideas of bishop b4 check, because the knight will cover a couple of different spots on the, where you might block the check. I think I'm just going to go ahead and probably go for knight f3 here. And if they do make the check, we'll just block with the knight on d2. Another idea here with after knight f3 is to play something like bishop c5, threaten the mate. I play e3. And then castle, d6, different ideas like that. One line that you can also play here is go for bishop f4 in order to protect the pawn, then you play e3. But I'm just going to go for knight f3, I think. Just kind of keep it simple here. Bishop f4, there are some g5 lines. There's some f6, pawn takes, queen takes f6 lines. I'm just going to play g5, or knight f3, sorry, and kind of keep it simple. So they go for the check. I'm going to block on d2 with, probably going to go with the knight here. Going to play a3 pretty soon. Probably have a bunch of trades here on d2. Black will usually end up getting the pawn back if you go for these kind of variations where you don't put the bishop on f4, because it does, have less protection at this point. So how to go about developing from here? The question is, do I want the bishop on something like e2 or d3, or do I want it to be on the g2 square? Both are useful. There are benefits of being on this diagonal because it'll keep the c4 pawn protected, but it depends on if black can really attack that effectively. I'm going to go ahead and go for a3, actually. Let's go a3 first. If black takes on d2, I might actually take back with the knight on d2, mainly just trying to keep the bishop pair. If he plays knight takes d2, that's going to give me the option, I guess, of playing pawn takes b4 in some situations. But if the bishop takes, I'm actually going to take with the knight, mainly because I want to try to keep my bishop pair alive. If he gets to take on d2 with the bishop, and I take back with my bishop, and we do a bunch of trades, so he does play knight takes d2. His idea being, if I take back with the bishop, then he'll take. If I take back with the knight, he doesn't actually have to take on d2. He could just move away at that point. But then even there, I can actually go knight back to f3, and then play something like b4, and that could be kind of an annoying situation for black. So bishop takes d2 is going to pretty much just result in a bunch of trades here. Black will castle, play queen e7, rook e8, and most likely get the pawn back. If I take on b4, he can take on f3. I take, and then he has options of b4 or e5. But I'll also have the bishop pair in that case, but I'll have double pawns in a lot of spots. So I'm actually going to take with the knight here. If he goes to c5, I'll actually go back to f3. And I want to try to chase the bishop around. Probably his best move at that point would be to play a5, but then I'll maybe have like bishop g5 or bishop f4. The main thing is I want to kind of keep the bishop on c1 alive so that it can go to f4 at some point and keep the pawn on e5 protected. Another option here is to play knight e4, but then I think he just plays bishop to d4. But then even there, bishop g5 actually looks pretty good. Hit the queen, and I'll be able to kind of simplify some things there. So knight e4 is actually looking pretty good. Knight e4 might have queen e7, and then again, this pawn will probably fall at some point. Knight f3, queen e7, I might have bishop f4, bishop g5. I can kind of hold on to the pawn. Whereas knight e4, maybe the pawn will fall at some point. I don't really want to go b4, because then bishop d4 hits the rook and the pawn. Knight e4, bishop, if he goes back to e7, then I can just play bishop f4 and guard the pawn. But knight e4, queen e7, I mean, I will be able to take the bishop, he takes back. He'll get the pawn back on e5, though. But I would have the bishop pair, which is still pretty good. The question is, do I want to win the bishop pair, or do I want to keep the extra pawn? I kind of want to keep the extra pawn if I can. So I'm going to go knight f3 and hold on to it. b4 is an idea here, pushing the bishop back to e7. For example, okay, so he goes queen e7. I think this is a mistake, though, because I do have b4. If the bishop moves away, then c5 traps the bishop. So I actually don't have to go bishop f4 or bishop g5 here. I think b4 is going to be good enough. There is no knight takes e5, take bishop like knight d3 or knight takes f3 mate, because I can take back with the pawn or take with the queen on d3. So I think b4 is going to trap the bishop here. For that reason, I think black should play like a5 instead. So I'm going to go b4. Bishop is kind of running out of squares. He will be able to maybe sacrifice it and win a couple of pawns here. But I'll be up a piece at that point. So this is one of the dangers of playing these types of gambit openings. If you don't know exactly what you're doing, you can, first of all, you're behind pawn at the start. Second of all, if you don't know exactly what you're doing or the correct follow-ups, you can get into some big trouble pretty quickly. And I think that's kind of the case with black here. Black's going to get a couple of pawns for the bishop, but keep in mind I'm already up one pawn. So even if they win one pawn back, for instance, I'll still be up a full piece. Bishop goes back c5. And black's in some danger here. I think for that reason, after knight to d2, yeah, I think for that reason, after knight to d2, maybe like, maybe castling is the move. I'm not entirely sure, quite honestly with you, what the move that black is supposed to play is here. I think maybe f6 is the gambit variation. But it seems like knight c6, a3, it seems like he gets into a little trouble here. Maybe he is just supposed to take on d2, I take back. Maybe he's just supposed to trade everything, play queen e7, get the pawn back, and be better at that point. So he takes on e5, okay. I definitely am not going to take on e5 because the queen takes hits the rook. So I'm going to take the bishop here. If he takes on f3, I take with the g-pawn. If he takes on c4, then I'm just up a piece. I'm going to take that way, I have to. He'll pick this pawn up probably. But I do have, again, the bishop pair. He only has one bishop. And I'm going to be up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 pawns to his 7. I'll be up a bishop. Down a pawn, but I'll be up 2 points at that situation. Queen e5 is the move. So not taking the pawn, but instead attacking my rook. Also, queen c3 check is a little bit of an annoyance. I think I'm gonna just do. I mean, I'm gonna lose one of these pawns. I can't protect this and this idea, and the rook at the same time. There's no like rook c1, for example. Probably just gonna do, like, rook b1 most likely, I guess. Bishop e3 protects this and guards the rook, but after bishop e3, queen c3 check, he'll pick up the c4 pawn anyways. And I'd have to go back to d2. But I mean that's probably okay as well. I could play this. This does block in the bishop on f1 though. So I won't be able to play e3 or e4 or anything like that. I'll probably just go rook b1. I can play bishop b2 pretty soon after this. So he does take this pawn instead. Let's just go for probably... I could play queen d5 and just go for a queen trade right away. That could probably simplify things quite a bit. Yeah, we'll just go for queen d5 and offer queen trade. If he avoids the queen trade, maybe queen e4 will be a check next move. He does trade, okay. C7 might be a target along the C file at some point. Bishop f4 might be an idea here. So we're up a piece, down a pawn. Let's just get our stuff in the game. Bishop b2 would have also been good to attack this pawn, but we could just go for this idea of targeting the c7 pawn, which is not very easy to guard. He has to play one of these two moves. I could play bishop g5 check, king here, bishop h3 for the pin, g6, e4, go after that pin pawn there. I could also go bishop g5 check and then just like e3, because then bishop b5 is a big threat. If I go e3, he does have c6 though. So actually, let's go bishop h3. g6 he does play. Let's go for e4 because we're taking advantage of this pin here. We have the bishop pair. We just want to open the position up. I could also castle, double the rooks on the c file, and go after the c7 pawn. So black's just under immense pressure. Bishop can't move. The rook could go to e8 to pin my pawn, but then I'll probably just castle at that point. He plays h6. Let's just go... I guess we'll just go bishop f6. Rook here, bishop here. I have to watch out for some skewer stuff. I don't want to go here and get my... Well, even bishop h4 actually is perfectly fine, because then g5, bishop takes f5. Yeah, we'll just do this, I guess. If he does this, bishop takes f5 as a check. I'm kind of trying to keep the king as tied down as possible, so that pawn takes f5 will threaten some, some big problems to him. Goes to e8. Okay, I'll just... I was thinking about castling, but I kind of like the idea of rook being on g1. Even rook g1 right now is looking pretty good. Yeah, let's go rook g1 right now. Threaten this pawn. He can't take here still because of the pin. The king has absolutely nowhere to move now. So if I can get rid of the g6 pawn, then play bishop takes f5, he'll be pretty much mated pretty soon here. Maybe g5 is actually his best move. Okay, he takes there, or he goes there, sorry. Let's take the pawn, because now bishop takes f5 is the idea. Rook g7 check is also a thought. Bishop takes f5, he can't move anywhere here. He has to play rook e6. I mean, I also could have just, I could have also just done rook g7, the king moves, bishop takes f5, that would have also worked there, but bishop takes f5 is good enough. The rook will block, I take, king e8, rook g8 would be made there. Okay, so let's go ahead and analyze this game. I think the main thing that white got into trouble with in this particular, the main thing black got into trouble with this particular game was the opening. First of all, the Budapest Gambit has its definite drawbacks. You are just being down a pawn. You get some counterplay, some attacking ideas, but as long as white just, defends everything, he should be fine. Another option for me is to play a3 and not even allow the bishop b4 check. That's just another move here that I could have done. After knight f3, he does do the check. I block with the knight to c6, a3. The knight took on d2. I took back with my knight. I think the problem for black just overall in this situation is I think they kind of have to give the bishop pair up, or they're just going to be down a pawn. They could just take on d2 and take on e5, and then I'd probably go something like bishop c3, d6, maybe f4, taking advantage of this pin. He can't take the pawn now because of queen a4 check, so probably just f4. Knight moves, maybe... if I take the pawn, he gets some counterplay with rook g8, maybe even just e4. I just get a very big space advantage. I have bishop pair. White's just got a better middle game going forward for sure. I'm not up a pawn anymore, but this is still... I would take white here in a heartbeat. So I think taking just on d2 followed by taking on e5 is the way to go. The benefit, though, for white in this particular line is that you just get the bishop pair pretty easily. When he goes to bishop c5, though, I just went knight f3 and held onto the pawn, and now it's just hard for him to... to deal with that. b4, is, like I mentioned, is already a bit of an idea. Maybe a5 is the best move, but then I'd probably still play something like bishop g5, bishop e7. Avoid the trade, because I don't want the queen to come attack e5 so easily. And black just kind of bunched up. Hard to get this bishop out without playing d6, which allows me to trade off the pawn. If he castles, I just do e3. And, again, how does black untangle here? Plus, black's still down a pawn, which is not so great. So I think black's best chance in this opening is just to take on d2, take on e5. But this is still, it still gets into a bit of a dangerous spot for black for sure. So I could have also done bishop takes d2 in the game. What I am not as crazy about in these situations is stuff like queen e7, queen, queen c3 or queen f4 or something like that, castle. It's pretty easy for black just to play like rook e8 and go get the pawn. I guess I could. It looks a bit odd for sure, but I guess I could do something like castle, rook e8, rook d5 to hold on to it. But it's just a... I'm still up the pawn, but it's like a bit of a weird version of it. Like maybe b6, bishop b7 is already a little bit awkward for me. So anyways, though, I just decided to go for this route. And after queen e7, he just kind of traps his own bishop. He is playing like a typical move in this opening to go get the pawn back. If I had to play bishop f4, then maybe black now goes a5, and maybe black is still worse, but not losing a piece. But b4 does just win a bishop here. We take the bishop. There's no mate or anything like that. There's no. Sometimes there are traps where like knight to d3 works if you have something in the way because of the pen, but this doesn't work now because the queen would take it. We're simply up a piece, and we just worked on trading stuff. There's probably other moves that work out here fine as well. Rook g1, that probably looks good too. Bishop b2. Queen d3. I just decided to go for the queen trade, and this is a pretty simple in-game here. You just pile up on the weaknesses, attack f5, play e4. Black is just black's just lost at this point. Not anything really good he could do. I took on g6. Bishop takes f5 would also work here as well because of rook g7 next. But yeah, this is just game over here. Rook blocks, take here. Rook to g8 is the mate. So I think, like I said, the big mistake that black got into in this opening was not knowing maybe the precise move order or knowing exactly what to do in these situations. Because usually, if you're going to play this kind of opening, especially if you're gambiting a pawn in the opening, you have to be very certain of how to play it. If you don't know exactly what to do, or you don't know the way to get the pawn back, or how to get the counterplay, then you're just going to be down a pawn for not very much. So like I said, I think the best way for black to play is just go ahead and probably just go ahead and take on d2, take the pawn. But again, it's still not such a great... it's just really not a great opening in general. Some of the lines that are maybe a little bit better, in my opinion, are the knight g4 lines. I know they're... the people that play the Budapest Gambit are going to probably disagree with me if they like the 94 move and stuff like that. But the lines where you go knight g4, usually you'll get the pawn back a little bit easier because the knight's also attacking the pawn. So if I try to go queen d5, queen e7, I can't guard the pawn anymore. And black's going to at least get the pawn back, even though white does still have, I would argue the better position just because of the extra space. But anyways, though, this opponent kind of messes up the opening a bit, gets a piece trapped, and we're just kind of punishing their slight misknowledge of the opening. So that's it for this game, though. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, ring the bell notification. That way, you'll get notified when I post another video. And I will see you around in that next video then. Okay, bye everybody.